landscape photography world, a podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This podcast is sponsored by SyncBack Pro, the professional photographer's tool to keep your images safe. How safe are your photographs? Or to put it this way, how would you feel if you permanently lost some or even all of them? The fact is, there are very real risks in storing your digital images on a hard drive, even if they're backed up to an external device. There's ransomware, hardware failure, file corruption, virus infection, and even accidental deletion or destruction. SyncBack Pro makes this problem go away permanently. SyncBack Pro is the professional photographer's tool to back up photographs, images, documents, and data files. Once set up, it keeps your files safe, quietly and reliably in the background. So if problems occur or disaster strikes, you'll have nothing to worry about. Your photographs will be safe. Which is why it's also the backup solution that I use myself for my own photographs. Take advantage of an exclusive 25% discount today by going to www.backup.sg. This software will never expire, meaning your photographs are safe forever. That's www.backup.sg. Give your photographs the protection they deserve. Michael Shainblum specialises in landscape, aerial, time-lapse and Milky Way astrophotography. He produces original video content and photography galleries, as well as photography tutorials and education. He has a decade of experience in professional photography and filmmaking, and he has always had a creative streak, from childhood comic strip doodling to the construction of Lego towers, to the iconic landscape photography and time-lapse work that he specialises in today. A dedication to challenging the boundaries of creativity, as well as a flair for coming up with unique ideas, has resulted in this dynamic visual artist being commissioned by large international clients including Nike, Samsung, Verizon, Disney, BMW and Google. Michael's work has also been published widely by renowned media outlets such as National Geographic, Wired magazine, Huffington Post and the Weather Channel. He runs his own YouTube channel, which is one of the most popular landscape photography channels on that platform. We talk about how he got started with YouTube and where he's taking the channel, maybe TikTok, his thinking on the future challenges in photography, and even peanut butter on pizza. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Michael. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Pretty good. Thanks so much, Grant, for inviting me on your show. This is going to be awesome.
For coming. You've been on the list for a little while, and it's taken a little while for me to get around to asking. But thank you for taking the time out today to talk to me. Let's start with, what is it that you're chasing in your photography? Start with the easy ones first.
Chasing. What am I chasing? There's so many answers to that question. Well, I guess if I was to boil down what I'm chasing in the most, everything points to this one thing that I'm chasing, and that thing would be happiness.
Cool.
That's the thing I'm chasing. To put it very simply and very plainly, photography and making art in turn makes me very, very happy. And as long as I'm getting that from the photography I'm producing and the work I'm making, that's kind of the end goal for me. Now, of course, it's spawned off to a million other things, and there's also a million other reasons why I shoot photography and what I'm chasing. But I would say if I was to boil it down to one thing, it's that.
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic answer too. It's, that's what motivates everyone, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you want to have fun, right? You want to have fun doing something, but yeah, and especially for me, it was just it was definitely my biggest outlet for self-expression and kind of, I guess, in a sense, figuring out who I was as a person through the photography and through the art. So yeah, it's been huge. It was the most life-changing, thing that's ever happened to me, for sure.
Fantastic. So what's your earliest memory of photography? How did you, when was the first time you actually had a camera in your hands, and what triggered that desire, I guess, and that drive to create your own happiness out of photography?
Yeah. Let me think about that. So a long time ago, for me at least. Well, it wasn't even that long ago. I just have a terrible memory. I'm not that old, but I just can't remember everything. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast. But uh, for photography, there's a few like little memories that kind of stick out to me. I remember probably the first time I ever used a camera. It was a disposable camera that my parents gave me to use when we went to Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was more in, I don't think I've ever even told this story. I think I was more intrigued with the different landscapey set pieces in
Yep.
Disneyland. And I was trying to take disposable pictures of them with like one of those little, I think it was like a little Kodak, thing that you just get developed.
Sure, sure.
And I remember being more interested in that than the actual rides, like than going on the rides.
Wow.
I was like, oh, look at these cool, look at Space Mountain, or I don't even know if you can see Space Mountain, but it was the other one, the log ride that goes
Oh,
down or
yeah.
something
Yep.
like that.
I know the one you mean.
So that was one event that I remember. That was probably my earliest. And then there was a few other moments where I kind of got more invested into photography when I was younger. Um, I remember when I think it was 12 or 13, I took like a New York trip with my class. It was like a class field trip thing that people from our school went to. And I remember taking a 1 megapixel Olympus camera to New York. I still have those pictures, and
Oh,
my
wow.
parents have them framed, and that's about how big they
Yeah,
could be
I can
printed. Like
imagine the.
they're like 1 inch prints
Yeah.
because they're so pixelated. But I have that as a big memory. And then I'd say the third thing, and the thing that really pushed me to love photography, was my first time taking a summer school class, learning how to shoot and develop 35 millimeter film.
Yeah,
I think
right.
we used, I think it was some old Canon 35 mil cameras,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who were helping us, um, they were showing us how we can develop in in a dark room. And I remember just being like, this process is amazing. It's so cool.
Yep.
But yeah, those were the three key memories I can think of, that really got me into it, I would say.
Cool, cool. So when
Yeah.
did it start to coalesce as something that you wanted to have as a career? And, I guess what were you doing before photography, and how did that come about that it became something that I guess took over your work life?
Yeah. That's also kind of an interesting one, because I've never done anything else. I've only
Okay,
ever
fair
done
enough.
photography. So in high school, it, my first year of high school is when I became absolutely obsessed with photography. Like it shifted from an interest
Yep.
into like, this is all I do with my time.
Yeah,
I
right.
would bring my little camera to school. I'd take pictures of my friends. I'd take pictures of like the texture on trash cans. If there was like
Mm-hmm.
a rusty trash can, I'd be like, wow, look at the colors and the texture is so cool. So I just became absolutely invested in photography. And it was that same year, or maybe a year after, where a lot of my friends were getting jobs for the first time.
Sure.
People were turning, I think it's 16 when you're able to get a job here. But they were getting jobs at all sorts of places, like supermarkets and fast food joints. And I don't know what it was about me. I went into, I want to say like 10 to 20 interviews, and no one wanted to hire me. I don't know what the deal was. Maybe I was socially awkward. Maybe I didn't know how to pitch myself. I'm not really sure, but
Sure.
like I applied everywhere and no one would take me. All the supermarkets, they were like, nah, not this kid. Like everyone else, you're good, not this kid. Um, and I got kind of lucky in the sense that a lot of people noticed that I was doing the photography thing, and I was kind of like one of my school's photographers. There was a
Yep.
few kids who did photography, and I happened to be one of them. So I started getting these little odd jobs when I was in high school. Maybe a band would be playing a local show, and they'd pay me
Mm-hmm.
like $50 to come in and shoot the whole show and do some promo pictures. Then they would tell their band friends about my work. And I was photographing skateboarders for magazines, a few very small
Sure, sure.
magazines here in San Diego. Uh, Little events like my parents, their friends would have some event, and hey, Michael can take pictures of your event. And that kind of spawned into, little engagement shoots and weddings. And I was
Sure.
just kind of finding all these little things to do with photography. And it became my first and only source of money. And it obviously wasn't much in high school, but it was enough to, have a movie night and buy tacos and
Yeah,
do all
yeah.
the things that high schoolers want to do.
Yeah, that's right. The pocket
Yeah.
change you need. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it just, over time from there, it just kept growing and kind of altering and shifting. And it's very, very weird how it's here now. And I'm in the position I'm in and doing the job that I'm doing. That part, I don't think, even when I was getting into photography, I never thought that could be a realistic thing at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, photography, crazy thing, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
I want to talk to you a bit about the business stuff, but I'm going to shift back to, I guess, the why a little bit more, and ask
absolutely.
whether or not you think it's important to have goals in your photography, and whether you do have goals, and if so, what are they, and how do you formulate them, and how do you, I guess, then work to execute them?
I'd say having goals is, it depends on what type of person the photographer is, right? What type of person they are.
Sure.
I'd say personally for me, it is good to have goals, but not to go overboard with the
Yeah. Right.
goals. Um, because in the moments where I've tried to create too many goals and be dead set on those goals, I think I kind of lost my way. Like I lost
Yeah.
the
Right.
whole reason why I like it, which is a lot of the spontaneity and the sort of mystery of the creative process. Like
Mm-hmm.
the day where you just wander through the woods and you're wandering aimlessly and something catches your eye, and that ends up being, those end up being magical moments. And I found if you're too goal oriented and you fixate too much on trying to get one thing or trying to do one thing, you kind of lose sight of that. But I think it really depends on what type of person the photographer is. I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle where I
Mm.
think in order to stay disciplined, because it is a career and I do have to stay focused, I write a lot of stuff down, and they're not necessarily these, you know, set goals, but I just kind of write down my thoughts on like things that maybe I need to improve, locations that I need to explore more.
Yep.
I do a lot of research into locations and things that I'd like to take pictures of. And um, it's funny because half the time that research goes out the window when you're out there and just having fun. But I
Yeah.
do find goals helpful. I give myself also, one of the things I found the most helpful just for myself is, I don't know if this is, I guess it's a goal, but it created like giving myself projects, like
Yeah.
set
Yeah.
projects in landscape photography. Like I want to create a series, and the series has these attributes, or
Mm.
the series is of this location, or, this storytelling element through the photography. And I think that has helped me a lot too.
Yeah.
Having those projects and goals definitely has helped to stay out of the creative burnout, I think,
Yeah.
for
Great.
sure.
Great. In terms of the way that you plan those projects, you said you do quite a lot of research on locations. How much research is a lot? Is it days, weeks, months before you get out and go somewhere, or is it a few days and okay, that's enough and off we go?
You know what it is? It's not as much of like I'm doing this before well, no, I shouldn't say that. If I am going to go on a trip, I definitely will put in specific research for that trip that I want to do. And I'd
Yeah.
say, probably a week of research,
Okay.
especially if I need to do a commercial job. And a
Yeah.
client wants to send me somewhere that I didn't anticipate going, and then I have to do all the pre-production and create mood boards and all that all that stuff that
Sure,
we
sure.
don't normally do for the personal side of photography. But um, what's funny about the research side? 95% of the research that I do is just me messing around. That's all it
Yeah.
is. It's not like I'm going on this trip and I must do this. It's like, I wonder if I was to go to like Zimbabwe, what would I be taking pictures of? And then I start going down a rabbit hole. And then
Yeah.
at the end of it, after the end of like 5 hours, I'm sitting there with like a Google map that has all these labeled photos and
Mhm.
places and, pinpoints and notes about it. And then the funny thing is I have maps of places around the world that I want to take pictures of that I've never been to and might not ever go. They're just
Sure.
kind of sitting there. Um, I find it fun though. It's sort of like a scavenger hunt, a little bit
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
go
I
through
mean,
Google Earth. And
I really love that part of it as well. In terms of that, I think you've described it really well in terms of a scavenger hunt. That hunt for locations. Like last year, I was well, actually, sorry, yeah, last year I was in the Lake District for the first time ever, and it was really about, okay, well, there's a lot of places that everybody goes and everybody takes photos of. And I was on the hunt for some things that were a little bit different, a waterfall that's up a little canyon that not many people go to. And so, it's really around finding those little gems and those little things that are a little bit different, I think. And I absolutely love that experience myself. I just find the research part of it quite rewarding, regardless of whether or not I end up going.
yeah, exactly. No, and that's at that, and it's so nice to find little gems that are
Mm,
maybe a bit less explored. Um, I think the one thing though with the research is I found it easy to talk yourself out of places
yeah.
because of the popularity. I don't know if you found that as well, where
Oh, yeah,
you'll
definitely.
research a location and you see, you could go on Google Images and type in the location, and then you see a few Google Images and you see how popular it is, and you say to yourself, well, I don't know if there's much I feel like I can do here. And so
Yeah.
you kind of think
Not
about
you
skipping
don't
it.
feel you've got
Um,
a voice to add to it.
exactly. And that is I think that's a huge mistake that I've made, and a lot of photographers make, is being so fixated on finding something different that they end up missing something that they could have done at a place. Because really, any of these locations, regardless of how popular they are, um, you can find something interesting about it that
Absolutely.
you want to say about the place, and whether it's like a grand vista view or a small scene within the landscape. I mean, Yosemite National Park, the Milford Sound is the perfect example. That was like, I made a big deal out of that because I
Yep.
remember seeing a few photos of the Milford Sound and I was like, this place it looks really, really, really incredible. And I want to go see it with my own eyes. But I had this preconceived idea that I wasn't going to be able to take a picture there. Like I didn't
Right.
even know if I was going to pull out my camera because I just didn't feel as though I was going to add anything to the
Mm.
landscape, or not to the landscape, but add anything photographically.
Yeah.
And it ended up being one of my absolute favorite locations I've ever been. I took like 20 or 30 images. They're in my portfolio now. Just this big rainstorm came down, created these massive waterfalls, climbing down all the cliffs. And I was just taking tons of telephoto images. And those ended up being some of my favorite images I've ever taken.
Yeah.
And I think that for me was like the final moment where I was never going to judge a location ever again, regardless of how popular. It could be somewhere that no one's ever been before, which I'm probably never going to go anywhere that no one's ever been because I'm not that. You know, I'm a photographer, not a mountaineer.
Fair enough.
but regardless of if it's like the most popular photo location in the world or a place that most people don't go, I'm going to treat it all the same.
Yeah.
I'm going to go there and just enjoy the experience and hopefully find something that catches my eye. And more often than not, when I don't put that pressure of like, oh, this place has been photographed a million times, that's when I come away with something I'm really happy with.
Yeah, I think that's an important lesson that a lot of people, as you say, it's a mistake a lot of people make in terms of looking at something and saying, it's been done. I'm not gonna add anything. But
Yeah, that's, oh, sorry.
all right.
Oh, no, go for it. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't have much to, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about where you talked a bit about how you got into photography and started working and the commercial side of it, which kind of you have a client usually, and the client usually wants something out of you, and okay, you can put your own artistic bent on it, but for your own personal photography, where did that artistic side of things start to click in for you, and how did that coalesce as a stream of thinking about photography in an art as an art form as opposed to photography as a job?
Um, well, the personal side of it definitely came first for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that I've always prioritized that side of it because even though I knew pretty early on doing photo jobs that I wanted to make a career out of it, I was always still taking pictures for myself.
Sure.
And it goes way back when to middle school and high school for me. So I've always treated it as an art. And I think for me, um, as far as like my photographic style and artistic style, it's really morphed and shifted and changed very subtly and gradually over the years. I'm not
Yeah.
someone who had like a revelation and then all of a sudden the art changes or anything like that. I can think of a few moments where I like found techniques that I really started implementing
Yeah.
and subject matter I really started, you know, I really enjoyed photographing, but it's been a subtle it's been a long subtle road for me. Like I see some photographers pick up a camera and a year later they're like incredible. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, how did you do that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. For me it took I don't know how long I've been photographing now, like 16 or 18 years, something like that, but
Yeah.
it's just a subtle climb, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if hopefully I'm creating images that are better than what I've done a few years ago, but um, it's it's been just gradual.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get a bit jealous when I see some of those 16, 17, 18-year-old photographers that are just absolutely phenomenal. And I wish I had
They're
that color
amazing.
when I was that young.
Seriously, I look back at the photographs I took back then.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh my gosh,
I'm the
can't even
same.
imagine creating some of the work.
Nobody on
Yeah,
social media is ever going to see them.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of a crazy thing. I guess to that point, there are more resources now, which is hugely
Absolutely.
helpful. I mean,
And the technology is there. I mean, when I was starting, it was all film. There was no digital. It just didn't
yeah,
exist. And so, you had to be quite selective in what you took, but also you normally had to wait a week to actually see the result because you had to send them off to get
absolutely.
developed unless you had your own darkroom, which at the time I certainly couldn't afford. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I wish I could have got more invested in the darkroom process back then, but it's like
So, yeah.
after the summer school program, it was kind of like, well, I guess that's over. I don't know how else I'm going to be able to, do that part.
Sure.
But no, yeah, the resources have gotten so much. I mean, it's crazy what cameras can do now. And
Mm.
it's crazy how if you want to find anything out, I mean, a quick Google search or searching on YouTube, or it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing the resources that are available now.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool.
YouTube University, I call it. You can pretty much learn anything you
Yeah,
want.
exactly. Yeah, even
um,
outside of photography, it's like
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how to do most things, and I Google it. Like, what do I need to do to put this this thing together in my house. And then of course there's like a million YouTube videos on how to do it. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
how crazy is this?
You talked a little bit about the development of your style and how it's still evolving. Do you see a correlation between the goals that you're setting and the way that you want your photography and your style to develop, or do you not really think about it in those terms?
I don't think I can. I think I'm sure there are people who can contextualize it like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm somebody who can. Um, yeah, it's the style just it does what it wants.
Fair
If
enough.
that makes any sense. It's like,
Yeah, no, it,
you
it
know,
makes total sense. That's a very familiar feeling for me. Is okay. Well, I want to. I might see something that I want to go and chase and try and work out, okay, how to do it. But a lot of the time, it's as you say, the style does what it wants, and that's how it turns
yeah,
out.
I guess it depends on like when you think of style and whether it's the style of how you're photographing something or the post processing you choose. It kind of comes down to it. Sort of says a lot about you as a person, right? It comes
Mm,
from your creative style, and like for me, a lot of my favorite images are the ones that they're they're images of different objects and subjects, but those subjects could be perceived as something completely different, like
yeah.
creating little fantasy worlds out of the photographs. And
Hmm.
I think it just comes from like, and probably in high school or in middle school, I just sit there daydreaming and doodling little stories in my notebook instead of paying attention. And I think that kind of correlates to some of the images that I take. And but then people will tell me, "Oh, your style of doing that," and it's like, it is kind of a style that I guess I've found, but it's just something that's always been in my head that I just kind
Yeah.
of use when I'm taking photos. Like, that rock looks like a cool rock, but you know what it looks more like? A dragon. Stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that if there was anyone listening who hasn't quite found their style in photography, that is the worst thing to try and force.
Absolutely.
It just happens naturally. You just keep taking pictures and you kind of just find what interests you and the stories that you want to tell, and that style kind of it builds itself, and that's how you create such a unique style, is by just being yourself and
Totally.
sharing the world the way that you want to share it.
Yeah. Totally agree. How do you define success in your photography? Less so the business side, more the personal side.
Yeah. uh how do I define success? Well, um certainly I have to be proud of the images that I'm taking.
Hmm.
I have to be proud of what I'm producing. It does not have to be the best image I've ever taken, because I've found that's very hard to do. A lot of my favorite images were taken years ago, and I don't know if, I have favorite images from like 2013 and 14
Sure.
and 15. So it's really hard to, keep creating the best image you've ever taken. So I don't really define that as success. It's more like just being happy and proud with the work that you're creating. But that being said, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's As artists, it is hard. Um, it's sometimes a bit hard to, always feel satisfied with what you're producing too. Like oftentimes I sit there and I look at some of the images I'm taking and I feel kind of not great about them, or I
Yeah,
feel
you're
like,
kind of
wow,
going, yeah, I could do better.
yeah, or you feel like, oh, I'm a terrible photographer.
Mm,
But
mm,
the thing is, I know that, and for, I'm sure a lot of the listeners will resonate with this. It's like, it's hard to always feel good about the work that you're producing. And a lot of the times you might feel like you're not a good photographer. The
yeah,
truth is, you absolutely are a good photographer. You're not an awful photographer, but I think that we're our own worst critics.
definitely.
And photography is also so subjective that there's no right or wrong way to do it, and there's no like instruction manual of how to really take a good picture, even though, a lot of tutorials will say that this is the instruction. There is none, right?
No,
It's like you can follow the rules to the T and still not get a result that you're pleased with or that you're proud of. So that's a battle. And I know this is a bit of a tangent, but that's a battle that I've gone through over the years, and I've been trying to use that feeling as kind of like motivation to keep working on my art.
Yep.
Regardless. But I would say those moments where I do feel really satisfied and proud of my work I would call that success. And then I would say the other thing with it beyond just me being happy with my own work is, and this is another thing that some photographers say, which I envy these people. They're like, I don't care what anyone else thinks about my work, as long as I like my work, as long as it's all me. And it's like, I get it. I'm not that person though. I do really enjoy sharing my work with others, and it does make me really happy when other people appreciate my work and enjoy it. And
absolutely.
And so I'd also define that as success too. Like if I can take images that I'm proud of and I'm happy with, and also in turn make somebody else happy by seeing my image, or evoke some sort of emotion in the viewer, I'd probably define that as success. That'd be the answer there.
I've had this conversation, that very conversation, a bit with a number of people around, oh yeah, well, I take images to make me happy, and that's great, because that is a motivation. I'm not dissing that, but I think the fact that you're taking them and sharing them shows that you actually not necessarily want validation from other people, but which is nice to get, but you're actually trying to express something to somebody else. You're trying to communicate, whether it's a story
Absolutely.
that's within your image, or whether it's just, hey, look where I've come from. This you see those social media posts where it started, where I'm at now, and that's somebody saying, hey, look, I've actually progressed in my work. And I absolutely love some of those because it shows that they're actually thinking about the fact that they're progressing from where they started and where they're at now. And I think a really important message for people to get is that everyone is on their own journey. Everyone's at different stages of that journey, and as you develop, you're going to go through different phases of that development, and your understanding of the craft or understanding of the technical and your technical abilities are going to improve as you go through that journey. And whether you're happy with a photo you took in 2013 or whether the 2023 one that you haven't taken yet is going to be your best one, it's really subjective.
Absolutely. And it is kind of the photographic journey is a bit of a roller coaster. I don't think it should be a straight. It shouldn't be a straight linear line, of just constant success. It's a rocky road. You're going to feel those down moments of like, I can't believe I'm a shit artist. Oh, why can't I do this? And then you're going to feel those other high moments where you're like, oh my gosh, look at this photo I just took. I'm so happy with it. So, but I do feel like, especially if you're a person like me who sometimes does have a bit of self-doubt, I think it's okay to feel, I mean, I know that we just talked about like validation and whatnot, but sometimes it is nice to get some admiration for the work that you're putting in. And especially if you have that self-doubt, it's nice to hear some other thoughts where you might think, oh, this photo I took, I don't know. And then you show a few other people and they're like, what are you talking about? That's a great image. I love the composition, and they'll kind of, and then you start to see it differently. Like, oh, was I being too hard on myself? Maybe this was a pretty cool photo. So anyways, yeah, it's okay to have a little bit of that validation. I think it's healthy. As psychologically, us as humans, we do search for, we want that admiration for the things that we're doing. We want people to enjoy it as well as us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the business side of things. You said you basically went straight into photography as a career. How
Mhm.
did that, I guess, shape, or how did you shape your business? Was that a gentle evolution that took some time for you to work out, or is it something that you started to form fairly early on and say, okay, well, these are the areas that I'm going to work on in terms of, I'm going to do event photography, and that's going to be
Mhm.
X% of my income, and etc. How much analysis, I guess, did you put into that early on versus letting it evolve as you went along?
Um, I had my ideas of what I thought I was going to end up doing with
Mhm.
it all.
I think we all do. Yeah.
That, of course, completely. Yeah, exactly. And it shifted pretty radically from that initial idea. I
Mm.
always had these kind of dreams or ideas that it would be amazing to be a landscape or scenic photographer. Um, but I also didn't really understand how that could be a career necessarily.
Sure,
Like
sure.
I basically thought that any landscape photographer was just hired out by Nat Geo, and that
Yeah.
was just their
Yep.
employer, and then that's how to do it. So I don't think I really understood the business model. But also, when I was thinking about that back in high school, the business model has changed so much over the years,
Absolutely.
anyways. Um, and social media is really at the essentially at the forefront of that. Um, yeah, I definitely wanted to do events and people photography when I was, kind of getting started. And I started doing a lot of studio work and kind of realizing that, well, even though this is nice, I would like to spend more time outdoors. I just want to
Mhm.
be outdoors and do, shots at the beach and in the forest and of the Milky Way. And for me, there was a bit of a turning point. It wasn't just a smooth uh, shaping of the business. The turning point was when I got to college and went to school in Santa Barbara for photography. It was for commercial photography.
Yep.
And I started in my personal time just driving up the mountain to do time lapses and scenes of the Milky Way and night sky. And that I think is where I kind of started that side of the career is
Yeah.
through Milky Way and time lapse photography. I was doing a lot of it and starting to get some recognition from some news organizations and blogs that would
Yep.
share and feature some of the work I was putting out. I think this was 2010, 2011, around that time. And I really, at that moment, when I started getting some work in the outdoor space and in landscape photography and in time lapse, I immediately pivoted all my attention away from the studio stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
into the outdoor stuff. Once I realized that could be a path, I was like, oh, that's the path I really want. So that was a huge pivot. And then I would say from there, from like 2010 to 2011, it's been a pretty steady progression of just trying to build the business and try and do different things, and whether it's education or commercial, or I don't really sell a lot of prints, but some prints here and there and
I
things
don't
like
know
that.
anybody that really does.
It's a hard thing to do. I do know a
It
few people
is.
who are really really
Yeah.
good at it, but that's a especially in the limited print world, that's a
Mm.
crazy. I don't understand that world. I haven't really
No, nor
tapped into
I.
that one.
I think you got to kind of tap into the gallery space a bit, and that can also be a bit tough, particularly when most galleries sort of want to take a 50% cut. You kind
Oh
of go.
yeah.
Uh, that
Yeah.
means you got to price the work at such a high level that you can make money, they can make money, and you're still covering all the costs of the print job and everything.
Crazy. Yeah.
Uh,
And there's also just only so much time in the day, right?
Absolutely,
You know,
yeah.
only, I think that actually is one of the trickier things about being a landscape photographer as a career choice versus some of the other photography I was doing before. If you're a wedding photographer or an event photographer, the path is pretty straightforward as far as
Yep.
what you should be doing and how to do it. There is a formula that works, and as long as you're producing good work and you're easy to work with the clients, and you're putting your name out there,
Yep.
really make it work. With landscape photography, it's not a very practical way of earning a
No.
living, and it's a strange path, and there's a million different directions you can go. And
Absolutely.
especially, again, bringing it back to social media, there's a lot of ways of doing it. Some people go the education route, some people go the commercial route,
Mm.
some people sell those fine art high end prints, and some people do YouTube videos. And there's just so many options. It's crazy. It's hard to know where to go with it all.
Yeah. I think an important lesson for people, though, is that wanting to get into that is to diversify and make sure that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket and expecting that's where all your income is going to come from. Because I think certainly the experience I've had is that the income that you're going to get, if you say, all right, well, I'm going to go all in on prints and that doesn't work out, what are you going to do? You're really going to need to have more than one string to your bow to actually make it work.
Absolutely. That's great advice. That's huge. That's huge advice. And we can apply that same thing to social media too.
Absolutely.
Don't put all your eggs onto one social media basket. And we've seen that now, how crazy it is, how much power essentially these platforms have over how we can share our work. And so another thing is just having a good website where you can really showcase your
Yeah,
stuff.
having your own website
Anyone,
is, I think, absolutely vital. If you don't have that, then my advice is get out there and go and make one. And whether you're using one of the platforms like Wix or Squarespace or any of those, I don't think it matters. Just make sure that you've got one that is your little space that you own. Because the social media, make sure you link back to that, of course, but the social media platforms, as you say, the power that they have to turn people on and off. I actually saw a post by somebody this morning who'd just recreated their new account because I think it was about 4 years or 5 years worth of work had gone down the toilet because Instagram had switched off the account because reasons. And
geez,
they're having to start.
wow.
Yeah.
They switched off their account.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know the backstory,
and
I haven't got into it, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane. But no, either way, the point of just having that place where you have full control over your artwork and how it's seen and how people can view it is quite important. And it's not something, I don't update my website like every single day or anything like that, but just keeping it semi up to date and throwing a few blog posts up that people might enjoy reading. I feel like that's pretty helpful to have.
Definitely.
Because we just don't know what's happening with all these social platforms. And really, the problem with social media is none of these companies, they all want everyone to stay on their platform.
Mm-hmm.
So
and they want
as soon as you try and link, with Instagram and Twitter and all these places, they don't want you anywhere else besides their little platform, and that becomes a problem.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about workshops. How and why did you get started in doing that? I mean, education is an important income stream for a lot of landscape photographers, but not everybody is a good educator. And I guess what made you turn in that direction?
Well, when I first started doing it, it was mainly just because I kind of thought it would be fun, and because I had a lot of people asking me for advice and just wanting tutorials and wanting to maybe learn in field. And so I thought it would be a really fun and rewarding thing to do because I could share, what I know with people. And that's essentially why I made the YouTube channel as well, is to be able to share my journeys, share my thoughts on photography, and also give people a little bit of education along the way too. I'm not sure when the first one I did, so it was a while ago, but it's definitely it's not easy to teach workshops.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a bit of a tricky thing. It you have to have a certain way of explaining things where people can, fully understand it.
Yeah.
I found that I think I'm an I I think I'm a pretty good teacher, and I think the reason for that is I'm not very technical.
Yeah.
So everything I've learned through photography had to be explained to me like I'm a 4 year old.
Right.
And it had to be very visual, very like, ooh, colors and shapes. And I had to do everything myself because I couldn't, I'm dyslexic. So I'm not a very good reader. That was
Mhm.
always a challenge for me growing up. I'm just a visual learner, and I'm a learn by doing type of person.
Yep.
So when I, try and help people with photography and with workshops and things like that, I explain it in the same way that I learned it, which I feel like is a lot more simple for people than maybe something that's overly technical or overly complicated. I just don't have that kind of engineer mindset, but maybe some other people would learn better through that engineer mindset
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
me. But yeah, the whole thing was just the rewarding aspect of teaching people. And I found a lot of like really great people to teach with over the years. I love doing the conferences, like out of Chicago
Yep.
conferences. Um, Everyone I've taught with at those conferences and the Photopills camps as well, I did those. Everyone I've taught with has been just absolutely incredible. And it's such an awesome community too. So I've
Yeah.
kept doing it for that aspect too,
Yeah.
the collaboration aspect.
And I think that's an important part of that education process is that you actually meet a lot of people, and whether they're people that you're working with to build a multi photographer workshop, or whether they're your students or clients or whatever you want to call them. The fact that you're meeting those people and making connections, and whether they become a repeat client or whether they just follow you on social media, I don't think matters. But the fact that you're making those connections is a really wonderful part of that education process, and certainly it's been one of the most rewarding parts about it, from my own experience anyway.
Absolutely. Um, and of course it's nice. And when you teach a workshop and someone gets a great photo that they're like,
Yeah,
wow, check this photo out. And that's really rewarding. Right.
totally.
But I think the most rewarding thing about it is really, um, when somebody leaves a workshop and you see them applying the techniques and the different creative aspects that you kind of helped with, and you can
Yep.
see the progression a bit. That is so rewarding. Like I love it when people are sending me images that they have been processing or taking after a workshop or after seeing a tutorial. It's Yeah, it's just amazing. It's awesome.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful part of that photography landscape.
Yeah.
You've shot all over the world. What locations are on your list? You mentioned you creating those Google Maps. What's on your list, and what's close to the top?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. Um, a lot of the places I want to visit are pretty close to home, actually.
Okay.
I'd like to do more road trips around the western part of the US.
Yep.
Um, in During COVID, I pretty much stopped traveling altogether. I
Mm.
didn't really go anywhere. And then in 2021, I also had some personal issues that basically made me take almost a year long hiatus away from traveling and doing photography.
Sure.
And so 2022 was my year to get out there and do more. And I got to see some incredible places. I got to go back to Italy and visit some friends, and go to
Fantastic.
Iceland and see the volcano. And um, after not doing it for 2 years, it was incredible. So for
Yeah.
me, like it's hard for me to even think about doing a bunch more travel because I've just been so excited and happy
Yeah.
with what I've with what I've done this year. Um, but I would say at top of the list, I would really love to visit Patagonia. I keep putting it off. It's a place I wanted to visit now for like 6 or 7 years, and I just
Yeah.
haven't gone. And also Norway. Norway was
Yeah.
really high on my list too. The French Alps. The French Alps would be a lot of fun. And then around like locally, yeah, I just want to hop in the car and uh, go to like Glacier National Park and
Yeah.
visit the Teton. I haven't been to the Teton since I think it was 2013. So I'd love to go back there and see how my eye has changed. You know, how my creative ideas have changed from when I last visited there. That's yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
fantastic. Do you
Yeah.
think where you live and that local, or the road trips that you're doing, do you think that influences how you've developed your style and how you shoot, and also what you shoot, or do you choose locations based on what and how you like to shoot?
Um, I'm very much a product of my environment in a sense. Like I grew up by the coast. I grew up here in San Diego,
Yep.
and um, I've always just hung out by the ocean and watched the waves come in. And so naturally, in my photography, seascapes became a huge part of what I do as a
Yeah.
career. Um, and yeah, every time I've found something new that I've never really tried to photograph, it's been a bit of like a shift, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I haven't really done this much. Like I remember when I first started shooting woodland photography, um, I
It's a
felt really
very
lost.
different
I was like,
discipline to your
yeah,
seascapes. Yeah.
I like photographing anything.
I'm the same.
So
Yeah.
I don't base any trips off of like what I'm used to or what I know. If
Yeah.
someone has an idea of where they want to go and they invite me on a trip, I'm like, let's absolutely do it because I know I'll find something, right? And if it's a new experience that I'm not comfortable with, even better. I
Yeah.
want to be not comfortable doing the photography. I want things that are challenging that I am uncertain about. Because certainly if I go out to the beach and shoot some seascapes, I'm pretty comfortable there. Like I know what I need. I have my ways of shooting it. But when you get into those environments of something you've never photographed that is challenging, that's when that's when you really gotta uh, put it into high gear and get your creative hat on.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What's the most memorable experience you've had while taking photos?
Well, that's a tough one. So many, um, so many memorable experiences. Let's see. I guess I'll try and think of something recently. That'd probably be good. Something recent. Um, the Iceland volcano was a lot of fun, a bucket list experience for me. Um, that one was a really fun one. That was a recent memory that I'm really, really happy with. But what's funny about that trip is I did it with my friend Andrew Studer, who I've been, photographing with for many years, and he's an awesome, awesome guy. When we did that trip to go do the lava, we weren't even thinking about photographing anything else. It was just about the lava.
Sure.
And then, funny enough, my favorite images from that trip ended up being of waterfalls that we did just off on the side. And even though the lava was incredible to see and witness, some of those waterfall images I got, I was pretty blown away by just the whole experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few key moments that stick out to me, like witnessing some pretty spectacular natural weather events, things like that. Like of course, the Iceland volcano, the volcano in Hawaii was one that has always stuck out in my memories as being just absolutely mind blowing. Seeing the aurora for the first time in Iceland, that was 2016, and I remember being absolutely awestruck. I remember when I first saw it, it was this big KP storm started, and I was looking up in the sky. And then I remember I kept like vocalizing, just saying like, oh my God. And I couldn't stop because it was that amazing. So, um, yeah, moments like
I think
that
I think
stick
things
out
like
to me.
that are the best.
Yeah. But you know what's funny? Even though those are moments where you're experiencing them and they're spectacular and they're life changing, there's also those little moments in photography where you could be sitting down at a little stream
Mm.
taking pictures of just little bits of reflected light on the water. and
Yep.
you're just taking pictures and listening to the stream, the sounds. You could be like a mile from your house or something, and
Yeah,
those memories are definitely special for different reasons. But
definitely.
it's hard to say what is your favorite or most memorable, because they're all so different and they're all so memorable, right?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to create more next year if I can.
Fantastic. What about horror stories? Have
Yeah.
you had any real challenging events occur?
I think that every shoot that I've been on has some sort of problem happen, especially the commercial ones that you have to do a lot of problem solving.
Mm.
Um, in photography, horror stories. Honestly, the biggest horror stories I can think of are just kind of what we talked about before. It's the self doubt,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
you're your own worst enemy. I mean, the landscape is the landscape. It's
Yep.
been here so many years before we were born, and it'll be here many years after we die. And
Yep.
it
Yep.
is what it is. The landscape, it just is. It's
Yeah.
just our mindset, right? And it's
Yeah.
how we want to treat it. It's if you go on a trip and you get completely shit weather, what are you going to do about it? You
That's
gonna,
it.
sit and
You
moan
can't
about it,
control
or
it.
make something happen. So I
That's it.
think that any horror story I can think of, it's usually me just being my own worst enemy, even when it's a bad situation. Like, I've had the typical, like, I've got my car stuck. I've got my, total blew out the gaskets on my car driving to Death Valley, and then had to, cancel the trip and had it towed. And I can think of a million of those stories, but like, I think
Sure.
the bigger horror story is just that self doubt, and, not fully utilizing the situation.
Yeah, fair enough. What have you learnt about the world through photography?
Hmm. I've never been asked that before. That's a
Good.
really good question. What have I learned about the world through photography? Well, before photography, I had never left the country. I had never left the United States. And frankly, I barely set foot on a plane.
Yeah.
My family doesn't really travel much. We never really traveled all that much. And the first time I ever got on a plane, it was a job that I was doing after college, and it had been the first time I'd set foot on a plane in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think that, after visiting so many countries, there's just incredible people everywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
everyone is so awesome. Like, every time I visit a new country, you might have an idea of what that place is supposed to be about. And you just learn how similar we all are. And if there are differences, how those differences end up making you and the people around you more special, and the experience is more special, like learning about new cultures. And I know that through landscape photography, we often don't show that through the photography,
Yeah.
because it is about the landscape. It's about the natural world. And, I'm not usually documenting a lot of the, like, just personal experiences I have when with traveling, but um, it's definitely opened up my eyes, to the world, and how incredible this planet is and the people on it. I know that's a little bit of like a cheesy answer, but that's probably what I've
I think it's a
learned. And
lovely answer. It's
um,
nice.
I guess if the other thing I'd say, if you want like a less cheesy, like less optimistic answer, is, just make sure you surround yourself with good people in the photography industry. Most of the photography industry, I'd say 95%, is incredible.
Yep.
Amazing people who care about photography, care about art. But, with the popularity of social media, and with how now photography is such a big, like, advertisement tool in a sense, um, when you're reached out to via email by companies and things like that, just be careful.
Yep.
Just be
Yep.
careful. Don't be naive about it.
Be
You
picky
know,
and choosy about who you work with. Yeah.
yeah, be careful who you work with. Make sure you trust that person. Get second opinions on things, especially when people want to reach out to you about, contracts and this. Oh, hey, I have this opportunity for you and that, because I've been screwed over a lot.
Yep.
So just be very, very careful. Again, 95% of people are incredible, but a lot of those people who are doing those cold reach outs, they're the other 5%.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
just make sure you're getting second, for anyone listening, just make sure you get second opinions on things. Make sure to read through everything that somebody wants to do if they send over a contract or something like that. And yeah, if you are going to go, let's say it's teach or work somewhere or do a big trip, just, do your due diligence on it, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
I guess it depends on the biggest challenge for photographers. It really depends on what stage they're at with their photography.
Sure.
I think that, if you're just getting started, it's the biggest challenge is just experience. You need to just go out there and shoot more and experience more, and in turn you'll naturally just progress. But somebody who's been photographing for a while, I think what's the biggest challenge for me, it feels like sometimes just keeping that inspiration going, keeping the creative juices flowing, and making sure to get through those creative burnouts that we all have. That for me is the most challenging. And I think for a lot of people that have been photographing a decent while, that's probably the thing that comes up constantly, right? It's just staying inspired. A lot of ways of getting around that, but it's something that just pops up, and then, you kind of work on it.
How do you deal with it?
I've done a lot of little things. One of my favorite things to do is to just, and this might sound counterintuitive, but just taking a break from it for a little while, and going on hikes and little trips without the camera at all. And just like, if you were to walk through a forest and not have your camera, and you just sort of observe the landscape, and you observe the textures and the colors, and I kind of just take a break and sort of just see the world for what it is without the lens. And also just, taking breaks from social media too, I feel like is pretty helpful. Social media is a big one. Social media can be like, there's a lot of positives for it, but psychologically, I think social media can be really unhealthy for somebody who's trying to progress in photography, because we're just consuming so much media and seeing so many photographs, and it's easy to feel like you're not doing enough, get discouraged on the work you're creating, comparing way too much to others, and sometimes shutting that off for a bit and just, I'm going to go to a place and just enjoy it, whether you have a camera or not, but without the looking at the phone and saying, well, what else has somebody done here? And, everyone's at Yosemite right now, and I'm not, I'm over here and I'm doing that. It's, just shut it off for a little bit and kind of just appreciate everything. But, and then also the last thing I'd say, two more things for inspiration, consuming other forms of art that aren't photography is helpful for me, like watching movies, listening to music, studying, painting and other forms of art can sometimes breed a bit of inspiration. And then the last thing is what we talked about before, which is creating those projects, creating a new project that you haven't done before, or, finding a new style to work on. Like maybe, somebody hasn't done drone photography. They start flying their drone around for a little bit. Maybe that's a way of it. That's just one, example, but just trying something new and, trying a new technique or a new subject that somebody hasn't photographed, that I feel like can be helpful too. Yeah.
If you couldn't be a photographer, what would you be?
I'd do something else art related. I'd probably, I really wanted to be a painter. Before photography. Like, I wanted to do sketching and painting and drawing and all that stuff. I think that looking back on it and looking at where things are and what career paths are open, I'd probably do, if I wasn't a photographer, I'd do something within, filmmaking or something in like editing, or just as long as I'm doing something art related.
Something creative. Fantastic. Do you prefer taking photos alone or with other people?
I don't think I prefer one or the other. I need both. And I know that's not that. I'm so on the fence with all these answers. I'm like, well, Yes and
Go
no.
on, Michael,
No,
take a position.
but it is true. Yeah, it is true though. I definitely like photographing myself alone and having those introspective moments where I can just do my thing. I would say in general, if I'm actively taking pictures, like I'm operating the camera, I'm trying to work on my composition, I I like to be alone. But I like to go on little trips with people. But usually when we're at a photo spot, we'll go off and do our own things and regroup after the photo shoot. And especially if I'm trying to film videos too, it's a little weird with I
Yeah,
try and be alone for that. I try and be alone for that. I would say in that sense, as long as I'm doing the photography side alone, like the clicking of the camera and the finding of compositions, I would say I enjoy traveling and going on trips with people more than I do just being alone. I
sure.
like chatting with people and hanging out with friends, and photography for me is quite a social thing,
Hmm.
as long as I can do the creative process alone.
Hmm.
But I do both. You know, I'll do my own solo trips and just go out for 2 weeks myself and um, get get what I want. And I would say though, like halfway through the trip, I if I'm not hanging out or at least visiting friends, I usually get a bit bored when I'm alone.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the vlogging and the YouTube side of things. How did that sort of come about, and where do you see that going for yourself? Obviously, you've been doing it now for a few years, and if anyone listening hasn't seen Michael's channel, go find it. You've probably been living under a rock because it's probably one of the more popular vlogging or photography vlogs that is out there. But how did you get into it, and where do you see it going? What do you still haven't done, I guess, in that space?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, the whole YouTube thing. I've gone back and forth between doing it and not doing it, and
Hmm.
I finally made the jump to like put more effort into it in 2019 because up until then I was just releasing time lapse videos and some tutorials on the channel. The reason I started vlogging and how I really got into it was I was getting sick of the way photography is presented on social media. And I
Hmm.
know that's hypocritical to say since I'm on every platform, like, you know, but I guess I was just like, I'd take a picture and be really proud of it and write, yeah, I could write like a long description that I doubt many people are going to read. And especially with something like Instagram probably being the biggest culprit, I feel like they just swipe right by your photo and
Yeah.
don't really give it a second thought and they don't really digest what they're looking at, or at least like that's what it seems like to me. And I even have people comment saying, whoa, I stopped my swiping to take another look at this. And I'm like, wow, we're in a position where that's a big compliment to say, like, I
That's
looked at
right.
your photo for more than 2 milliseconds, right?
I looked at this for more than a second.
Yeah. And I don't know. I guess with with YouTube, I realized that people are sitting there and they're more willing to digest the long form content.
Hmm.
And so, and also I'm a terrible writer too. So this is perfect. I can sit there and describe what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what my thoughts are on photography and what my feelings are on the images I'm taking, and kind of in a sense use that as more self-expression and really just share with people what my ideas are behind a lot of these images,
Sure.
and have them sit there and really look at the photographs that I'm taking. So that was a huge thing for me, and that's why I started doing it and why I started getting more invested in it. The only downside to YouTube is it is the most time consuming thing I think I've ever done in my entire life in photography. Um, I'm sure there's people who are a little quicker at putting these videos together than me, but every single video takes a tremendous amount of time.
Hmm.
It takes like, you know, the filming part's easy. That part takes like, you
Well,
know, you film for a
you say
day,
that,
2 days, 3 days.
you say that, but I can see that you've obviously hiked up that hill a couple of times just to get that B-roll shot of you hiking
That's
up the
true.
hill.
You do twice the amount of walking and
That's
you
it.
have so much gear with you when you do it. Um, But what's funny is the filming part of the YouTube thing for me is very easy and
Yeah.
very simple, and it takes like a day. The editing part, it takes me a week or two to edit together these
Yeah.
videos, doing the voiceover, adding the music, finding the right key moments, building a story. Maybe something happens during the shoot and I don't have footage over of it, but I need to somehow weave the story. So I have to find it's the whole thing takes forever. And usually when I put out the videos, I'm quite proud because of the amount of work that's put in.
Mm.
But people do on these on YouTube expect videos quite frequently. So you usually won't, at least what I found is the perfect sweet spot for me is releasing a video about every 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still so much work. I have so much respect for anyone who puts out these YouTube videos, especially guys like Nigel Danson, Thomas Heaton,
Yeah.
Gavin
Well, they're doing
Hardcastle,
weekly, aren't
all
they? It's,
weekly videos, and they're
yeah.
long and they're really well put together. I think a lot of people watching do not realize the amount of hours that are put into making these.
Mm. Mm.
I don't know how those guys do it.
No.
I'd go
All right.
crazy if I did it every week. I would have zero time to do anything else if that was the case. For me, 2 weeks is already like a little bit overload, but I'm trying my best because I really enjoy making the videos for sure. As far as what you had asked previously, like where do I see it going? I have absolutely no clue. Just keep making videos. If I go on a trip or I go photograph, I try and do a few videos if I have time. And I really don't, I have no idea what I truly want to do with the channel besides just keep doing these vlogs, and hopefully people will still keep watching them. Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure.
Fair enough. How do you deal with the criticism that commonly gets put up against so-called YouTube photographers? You're a YouTuber, not a photographer. Do you get any of that sort of? I think it's really rude feedback, but do you get much of that? I
Yeah, it's
know some
absolutely
others.
rude feedback.
Yeah, I know
YouTube in
others.
general,
I was just saying, I know
yeah,
others
I've
get
seen
that sort
people
of
get
feedback.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Mm.
Um, and sorry, there was a little delay on the audio, a little bit of a
All right.
glitch there. I've seen that before. There are certainly people who are YouTubers and who that's their main thing, and they happen to take pictures. Um, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
That might
totally.
be their whole income, and they like to take pictures, but mainly they're producing YouTube videos.
Mm.
I think a lot of the landscape photography community that I've seen on YouTube, they're landscape photographers first who
Yeah.
happen to make landscape photography videos.
Yeah.
Um, Most people I think I'm lucky because most people who find my channel have already followed me on Facebook or Instagram or somewhere else, or they've looked at my work somewhere else. So they kind of recognize the name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I've never been called a YouTuber, and I am a YouTuber because I make videos, but I consider myself a landscape photographer who just happens to be putting out YouTube videos. And if you
Fair enough.
enjoy the YouTube videos, fantastic. If you don't, that's okay too. Um, it's, I mean, I have gotten a lot of criticism. Sorry, dogs are going crazy outside. Um, I have gotten a lot of criticism on YouTube for um, other things. Like people are very critical on YouTube, whether it's like the audio mixing of a video or, I mean, people unfortunately can be a little mean on
Yep.
YouTube, especially when you're putting yourself out there that much. Like I've had people be like, your voice is annoying. It's like, okay, thanks, guy. What do you want me to do about it? It's my voice. Like if you don't like it,
I've
move
got a
on.
vocoder on all of my soundtracks.
Yeah, I've had people be like, "You're annoying, you're ugly." It's like, geez.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
it's few and far between, but it's YouTube is there's some nastiness on YouTube. I'm not sure why that is, but
Mm.
overwhelmingly, like 90 to 95% of people are really kind on
Yeah.
YouTube. It's just that one comment that you get where someone's being really mean. And you're like, why are you being so mean? And then that one sticks out in your head, and you're like,
Yeah, it's
even
funny.
though there's a
You,
hundred
you,
other
you may have
comments,
100 comments, but the one that sticks out is always the that nasty one. Yeah.
it's always the one. And I have this other thing too, where every single time I release a video, immediately 3 or 4 people unsubscribe from the channel.
Oh, okay.
And I always get like a dislike or two on the video right when I release it, like not enough time for someone to actually watch the video.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't even get it. It's all a confusing thing to me. But as long as people enjoy the videos and they're really, they love the channel and they love the way I'm, you know, doing things, then I don't care. But if somebody wants to hate on it, they can hate on it. These
Yeah.
videos take me way too long to like regardless if somebody says I don't like your video and it's not great, I'm like, I really don't care. And the reason I
That's
don't care is because I'm proud of it, because it took me so long. Like, if you don't like it, move on to something else. I just don't
it.
have the
You
time,
you do have a choice of not clicking the play button.
Absolutely. And it's like, then somebody will be like, oh, this video is awful. It's like, well, I'm sorry, I can give you a refund on the free YouTube photography tutorial you just watched. I'm sorry it wasn't, you know,
Uh,
pleasurable enough for you. What more would you like me to do here? Anyways, I know I'm getting a little ranty, but
no,
it's just
it's
like,
fine. I I've got to say I've had again 99% positive feedback on the podcast, but I
mm,
feel you, Michael. That it's always that little one that you go.
always is, right? That one that sticks out in your head. Um,
Takes up way too much
it's
space, I
interesting.
think. Yeah.
It's again, and I know we keep circling back to this, and it's something that's brought up a lot. It's social media, I
Mm.
think. It's the anonymity of social media. It's like the person who's always calling you out is somebody who they don't have their real name up there. They don't have their real photo up there. They're
Yep.
like just an anonymous person. And, I bet you if they were standing right face to face to you and talking to you as a human, as we should be talking to each other, they're not going to say the nasty things that they
No,
say.
exactly.
But it's so much easier when you don't see the other person as a human being. And that, I think, is the one of the most negative things about social media is sometimes people lose sight of the fact that they're talking to other human beings on the other side. You know,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the other things I've noticed is they tend to be people that I won't say, um, they've done nothing creative, but they sort of tend to be people that aren't very creative in terms of if you take a look at their profile, they're not being artistic with their photos. They're not really getting, I guess, the attention that they might desire through other means, and so they go for any kind of attention they can get, whether it's positive or
yeah,
not.
that could be projection then, yeah, for
Mm.
sure. And you know what? While we're talking about it, of course, as you mentioned, 90 to 95% of the people are saying great things. And I don't think we should lose sight of that. Like, it's
No,
amazing
absolutely.
that we're able to connect with others in the way that we are. But also, you know what? It's probably healthy to have a few haters out there. If
Absolutely.
somebody if you're doing something interesting or unique or something that's, you know, somebody might hate on it, right?
Yep.
And maybe that's a good sign that you have one person who doesn't like something. I mean, photography and art is so subjective that you're just never going to get 100% of the
There's
people to
people
like
that
what.
don't like the Mona Lisa and will complain about the crooked horizon and all the rest of those sorts of things.
There's people who watch videos of dogs online being cute and will somehow find a reason to hate on it. It's like, how are
Yeah,
you hating on a video of a dog like doing something cute? Like, now you're just finding reasons to project, at
that's
that
it.
point. So
That's
it's
it.
okay. You just got to remember that. It's like, all right, well, I got this one hater that's on here, but you know what? The same person's probably going to dog videos and like giving the thumbs down and saying, blah,
That's it.
blah, blah, this dog's annoying. So it's like, whatever. Who cares?
Where do you see the future of photography going?
Well, I hope the future of photography just keeps on the same trajectory it is now. Well, you know what? No, I shouldn't say that. I hope that people will find more time to appreciate and view photography.
Mm,
That's what I hope for in the future. I hope that this whole like instant gratification thing kind of slows down a bit. People learn to really appreciate like sitting there and digesting an image rather than just moving on to thousands of others. I hope that we can take more time, spend more
yeah.
time on the photographs, and spend more time, you know, less quantity over quality, I would say.
Mhm.
That's my hope. I don't know if we'll go in that direction. And there's some things that are coming out that are a little on the scary side for me, photography wise. This
Like
whole
what?
AI thing is a
Yeah.
little scary for me. It's a little
What
weird.
way?
Um, yeah, just seeing what, if you type in a prompt into these websites and you say landscape photo, mountain, flowers, and then suddenly it's creating like these pretty wild pictures. I mean, there's a lot that technology is crazy and it's hard to predict where this whole thing is going. I hope that true photography and true creativity will always shine through and that people will appreciate art for, the creative side and
Yeah.
each individual artist. But,
I think as long as
um,
people are honest when they're posting stuff like that, this is AI created, as opposed to his
absolutely.
photo I took, then if somebody's trying to pass off an AI image as a genuine photo that they took, then I think there's definitely some detriment going on there. But I think, as you said, the fact that human creativity is there. I think there's a place for AI, but I also think there's going to always, but I certainly aren't going to stop going out and taking shots of seascapes or waterfalls or mountains or whatever it is that I decide to take a shot of on the day
Yeah,
because somebody's creating AI art. And I've had a dabble, I've had a look. It's interesting and so forth, but I personally don't find it terribly creative because all you're doing is typing some words and hitting enter and waiting for the computer to spit an image at you. And to me, that's kind of that to me is less creative in my mind than getting out into the field, capturing something, taking it home, processing it to the best of your abilities, and giving people a look at it. That's my
absolutely.
opinion, anyway.
Yeah, it's more just interesting to see how far this technology is going, like how insane it is.
Absolutely. I can
So
see a challenge for product photography. So if a
mm,
marketing manager says, "All right, well, I don't need Mr. Photographer. I can just type in, show me a shiny Coke can with beads of moisture on the side, lit from the left hand side, exactly how I envisage it, and I can put in, then I can see that probably eating into some people's careers, maybe.
we'll we'll have to see how it goes because
Yeah.
it's still pretty early on, and
Oh, definitely.
we'd also be naive to think that some of these technologies aren't going to start being implemented into cameras themselves.
Well, yeah,
So
I can certainly see that. Yeah, where
it'll be
we
very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see the way technology shifts this industry over the years. I mean, if we look even just 5 to 10 years, how much this industry has changed over time,
yeah
it's really hard to predict where it's going to go and how it's going to change. But again, I'm very hopeful and optimistic that, you know, art and photography will stand the test of time. People will still appreciate, the creative side. But I do really hope that even if it's like a new social, I don't know if we need any more new social media platforms, but I kind of miss when people were on platforms like Flickr and 500 Pix more. I know 500 Pix kind of went downhill with some of the choices they made, but I do miss when, somebody, you could just put out an image every week, like one image that you spent a hell of a lot of time working on, and people would really give you thoughtful feedback and things like, and that again is why I shifted to the YouTube side, because I could do more of that and really appreciate photography. So I hope some of that mindset of watching the long form content and, sitting with the photography and sitting with the art will start to bleed out into other places, instead of just the quick reels and quick swiping. That's my hope, at least.
I've got a similar hope, and as you say, it'll be interesting to see where it all ends up.
Definitely will. We'll definitely have to see.
Are there any photographers out there that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Yeah, there are too many to mention, but let's see who. Yeah, my friend Marco Grassi is awesome. He's incredible, and I teach with him quite a bit, and he's just a really awesome guy. So he would be worth talking to for sure. Alex Noriega, TJ Thorne, a good one. Trying to think of who doesn't talk on podcasts a lot. Someone like a little different. Let me think about that. I can give you a few more names.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll think more. But those are three just right off the top of my head that I can think of.
That'll do nicely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got one more question, and for many of the listeners, it's the most important one that I can ask, because it's a problem that we've been trying to get to the bottom of for a long time. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I'm not. You know what though? I'm not. If that's somebody's thing, I'm not going to knock them for it at all. You know what? It's like photography. Pizza is subjective. Not everyone's going to appreciate the same pizza. So, I try and treat it in the same way that I would art and photography. Making pizza is art. So if someone wants pineapple on their pizza, I'm not going to knock it. But if they're going to offer it to me, I'm going to either pull did I say peanut butter before? I feel like I've been so spacey today.
You said pineapple.
Okay, I was thinking in my head, did I say peanut butter? And then I was like, what if you put peanut butter on pizza? See, now that's a hot take, right? We're talking about pineapple on pizza, but then I'm like, well, what about peanut butter? There's a hot take right there. Michael Shainblum, he wants peanut butter on his pizza.
Fantastic.
No, I'm not gonna knock it. Whatever anyone wants to do, I'm gonna stick with the regular pizza without the pineapple. And maybe, you know what? If somebody wants to do that, I can have a little fruit salad on the side that has some pineapple. I'm okay with that. Okay, mixing some different meals together.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, Michael. It's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit better and learn a bit more about what you do and why you do it. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, thanks so much, Grant. I really appreciate you inviting me on. It's awesome. And great questions too. Like, there was a lot of questions that I had to take a few minutes. I had to take a few seconds and be like, I've never been asked that before.
Thank you. I'm trying to do something a little bit different to everyone else.
Oh, it's awesome. Where can people find me? Oh, I don't know. Just on all the places where people seem to share things. I guess like if
Shainblum, you'll find him.
Yeah, I'd say if I was to like, where I think people would want to see the work, maybe YouTube would be good. Sure. My name into YouTube, you'll find some fun videos that I've put a lot of work into. And then also I have some stuff on my website too, so they can type my name into Google and my website should be the first thing that pops up. But of course, if you're on any of the other social platforms, Besides TikTok, I am as well. But honestly, by the time this comes out, maybe I'll have a TikTok dance video at that point. So we'll see.
Awesome. Can't wait to see that. That's the content.
I don't know. I don't know how TikTok works. People keep telling me to join.
Uh, I haven't touched it, and I probably never will.
You do like a little dance, and then you're like, this camera or that. I don't know how it works. I'm not really sure. I thought it was all dancing, and then people are like, you should share your photography on there. I'm like, wait, what? I thought it was like people lip syncing. What am I going to do photography? I don't know.
How are you going to do a tutorial in 15 seconds?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's hard to make my tutorials even less than like 20 minutes. I don't know how I boil it down to 15 seconds. Here's a 15-second photography tutorial. Here's a camera. Go take a picture. It's like, I don't know.
Well, there you go. You've written it. Well, thank you very much.
I just have to go film it now.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, but not TikTok. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.